This past week, when one of Hungary's biggest opposition newspapers, Nepszabadsag, closed down, the details of its own story were murky. The reasons cited by the newspaper's owners were economic. However, journalists there said the move was political. The owners said that the paper had been suspended, that it isn't dead. Again, not everyone believes them. Nepszabadsag, which means people's freedom, was influential and had often been critical of Prime Minister Viktor Orban's right-wing populist government. In the week prior to its demise, it published exposés on corruption within Orban's political circles. It also criticized the government over a referendum held earlier this month on the issue of Hungary, refugees, and the European Union. Since coming to power for the second time in 2010, Viktor Orban has reined in state-owned news outlets, changed the way the rest of the media are regulated, and the closure, even if it does prove temporary, of Nepszabadsag is being seen as part of a wider attempt to wield influence over private media as well. The government denies any involvement in this story, putting it this way: the true violation of freedom of the press would be if the government interfered with the decision of the media owner. However, there is a regional trend at play here in some former Soviet bloc countries, involving politicians, well-connected businessmen, and the media groups that they control. And it's a trend that is affecting how public opinion is shaped. Our starting point this week is the Hungarian capital, Budapest. Friday, October 7th, moving day at Nepszabadsag, or so it seemed. Journalists and support staff had been told that the newsroom was moving to a new building. They were each given a box to pack their things. Newspapers are often the dispensers of bad news, and Nepszabadsag had some, but kept it, not only from its readers, from its own employees.
Saturday morning, I got a message from one of our investigating journalists that he tried to access his company mailbox, but it had a message that he is unauthorized. So his first idea was that he is fired. A few minutes later, there was a company letter telling that Nepszabadsag is being shut down, but nobody come and look us in the eyes and say that your work is not needed anymore. We were in total shock.
What you have to know about this was the largest selling opposition or largest selling political newspaper in Hungary. The owner said that it was a business decision, economic decision, which cannot be true. You just do not close a newspaper like this in a moment. So if you do it, then you have other reasons, not economical reasons.
The government denial is very strategic. I mean, saying that there is no interference in the press is almost funny. The interference into the press has happened since 2010, when Viktor Orban, the prime minister, came back to power.
Nepszabadsag got its start 60 years ago during the Hungarian uprising against Soviet control as the official paper of the Communist Party, and then transformed into the voice of the political left. Over the past few weeks, it broke two major stories alleging government corruption, one about a cabinet minister's penchant for expensive travel, the other on the governor of the central bank and an alleged conflict of interest. Hungary is politically polarized, but even journalists on the other side of the ideological fence, like Andras Stumpf, say they're sorry to see the paper go.
For a while, they were really doing good journalism. They were always lefties. They were always on the side of the socialists, but it was quite obvious, so they also told you. But there was quality journalism too. How damaging it was, I don't think it was doing much damage to the to the government.
So this could partly be attributed to a general apathy among the people, but this could also be attributed to the fact that access to information of this kind in the countryside is quite difficult. In the countryside, people do not really have a choice. All they can listen to is the public service radio, maybe a Catholic radio station, or perhaps a commercial radio station that is just redistributing the news bulletins that have been compiled by the national news agency, which is under government control.
The Orban government came to power in 2010 and quickly began to reshape the Hungarian media landscape. Within a year, demonstrators were on the streets of Budapest, protesting over the government's new media regulator, which was given wider powers and was stocked with the government's hand-picked appointees. That, and the changes the government made at the state-owned broadcaster Mandiner.Hu, drew the concern of the European Union over a lack of plurality in the Hungarian media. However, the EU admits that its influence over media policy in its member states is limited. That has been apparent in Hungary and other post-communist countries, such as Poland, where the Law and Justice Party government led by Jaroslaw Kaczynski plans to emulate Hungary's approach to the media, which has included overseeing the sale of media outlets to new owners more aligned with their government's policies.
In Poland, since the Law and Justice Party got into power, the government has done quite the same thing as in Hungary, like putting in place in July a national council, firing some public employees from the TV or from the radio, or trying to implement new laws that are violating the freedom of press. And in general, in the media landscape has changed a lot, because also oligarchs have been able to acquire a lot of private media in the past few years.
One of the general regional trends in recent years has been the withdrawal of foreign capital from the region, generated by the economic crisis back in 2008. So some of the biggest investors have indeed left Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic as well, which is an issue because foreign ownership was seen as a guarantee of editorial independence, because foreign owners were largely autonomous. And their places have been taken by domestic media oligarchs who have very close relationships to the political parties and political actors.
We always had this strange feeling or this fear it will happen to us. And I'm pretty sure a lot of colleagues in Poland, in the Czech Republic, in Romania are feeling the same. They are not using the law anymore as a weapon against us, they are using ownership as a weapon.
Media owners do wield power, the kind that most parliamentarians, including those who protested the closing of Nepszabadsag this past week, will never have. Meanwhile, those boxes that were packed up that day under false pretenses, they've been delivered to another office in Budapest, a makeshift newsroom. The out-of-work reporters insist that there are still Hungarians out there willing to buy their kind of journalism. But is there anyone in Viktor Orban's Hungary willing and able to own it? Hungary's media landscape, both private and public, has been altered by the government over the past 5 years, but there are some alternative news outlets out there offering up different kinds of coverage. Here are some of them. Andras Stumpf was working for a paper called Origo when he did a story on a cabinet minister's lavish expenses. As a result, his editor was fired. So Stumpf quit, and he, his former boss, and another colleague launched Direct 36. Direct for the style of reporting. 36 is Hungary's international calling code. The site has exposed several prominent politicians for failing to reveal how rich they are to voters. Atlazo is Hungarian for transparent. The site is crowd-funded, investigative, and features a bribe tracker that allows readers to report corruption anonymously. Finally, when Viktor Orban created a new media regulator, Klub Radio, a persistent critic of the government, became one of its victims. It lost its broadcasting license in 2011, but came back after winning a tough 2-year court battle with the regulator and remains on the air.